There was a time in the distant past when I really worked in political science, political social science research. And I found myself highly motivated all the time to speak out, write articles, and do what I could to declare, hey, what's going on in political research is a scam. There was a time when I was involved with Buddhist research, the history of Buddhism, philology, translation of ancient texts, that sort of thing. And I found myself tempted very frequently to speak out, write articles, and, frankly, it started all kinds of conflicts and controversy, pointing the finger and saying, hey guys, wake up. Something going on here, and it is a scam. Until quite recently, I was involved in vegan activism for veganism as a political cause, and I was frequently tempted, frequently drawn out of my slumber to write articles and make YouTube videos and really scream as loud as I could to draw attention and say, look guys, there's something going on here that is a scam. Beneath the veneer of respectable mainstream press reporting, beneath the reassuring kind of headlines that the people who write articles for the newspaper know what they're talking about and that you as a reader can become well informed by reading these articles, we have a very dangerous game of self-deception and misinformation going on. An example that matters today and may be forgotten a few months from now, but an example that matters today and that reveals the depth of this problem, which is going to be a profound problem in the next 10 years. Joe Biden allegedly is supported by 48% of African American voters. We normally say in plain English, 48% of black voters in the Democrat Party allegedly support Joe Biden. Now, there was a time when the footnote or the warning I would insert here is no. What that means is 48% of black people who are willing to answer a phone call from a stranger and then answer a survey via the phone that takes, 10, 12 minutes, 48% of those black people vote for Joe Biden, right? And that is itself a powerful source of skew, a powerful source of bias, a powerful source of misrepresentation. But what we're dealing with today is so far removed from that. It's so bizarre. It's so surreal. The fraud that is being passed off as legitimate polling data, that if I traveled back in time to, let's just say, 1985, if I traveled back in time to 1985, my own youth, I was alive then, and I walked up to a professor of political science and I described the methodology being used now by Ipsos Knowledge Panel, he would say to me, that's not polling. What are you talking about? That's not a poll of the general public at all. Probably a mainstream professor of political science, as recently as 1985, if you described to him the methodology that's now being taken for granted and treated as legitimate by the Washington Post, New York Times, by mainstream American newspapers, if you describe this to a professor in 1985, he'd say, what do you mean? That sounds like something the Soviet Union would do. That sounds like something some kind of communist government would do as like a conspiracy to misrepresent public opinion, to create an illusion of what public opinion is. What is Ipsos? Ipsos Knowledge Panel. Ipsos Knowledge Panel is a club of about 55,000 members. It has a membership. They're not polling the general public. They have 55,000 members. On the website of Ipsos.com itself, they do not directly say that these people are paid. It doesn't say they're paid, it doesn't say they're unpaid. I have heard sources in political science stating it as a fact that they're paid. Googling on the internet now, because there are 55,000 people who participate, some of them must chit-chat about this, right? I've found people saying that you're paid with some kind of voucher or coupon or discount. So it's something like you get a gift card where you can buy something. They were suggesting that it's not really payment in cash, but that there is payment of some kind. So there are 55,000 people selected, recruited, and remunerated. 55,000 people employed to be the knowledge panel. Right? Again, if Soviet Russia did this, we wouldn't regard it as legitimate. Right now, today, if communist China did this, we'd all laugh it out of the newspapers, right? If Venezuela did this, if Iran did this, all right? If the Muslim theocratic mixed democracy system in Iran does have elections, never forget that, very religious country, but they do have democracy, they do. They have elections, they have newspapers, they get to debate who's the better candidate and that kind of thing. If Iran did this, if Iran said, well, we're not going to publish polling data, we're not going to poll people about who's popular, we're going to employ a few thousand people on a knowledge panel, and their job is to fill out these questionnaires for us over the internet, through internet questionnaire. All right? It would be laughed out of the room, and people would say very simply, this is not a poll. This is not what polling meant in 1985. It's not what polling meant in 1995 either, right? The most fundamental technological change here was actually not the internet. It was cellular phones and people not wanting to answer or comply or participate on cellular phones. And even worse, it's not uniform. So a lot of the polling data done by telephone underrepresented the type of person who would vote for Donald Trump. So this is now an established fact because enough money was paid to research it. It's common sense, but it has also been proven, in as much as the social sciences can prove anything. It's not just that left-wing people and moderates and right-wing people all equally refuse to comply with telephone polling. You can imagine there are certain types of left-wing social justice warrior type people who are happy to get that call. Say, hey, we want to do a poll with you, and we want to talk to you for 12 minutes and ask you some questions, and your answers could help make the world a better place. There are certain types of optimistic, happy people who will then participate in that poll. And disproportionately, the type of people who vote for Donald Trump hang up the phone. You can say they're impatient, you can say they're anti-establishment, you can say whatever that is. This was one of the reasons, not the only one, why polls failed to report accurately how many people in the Rust Belt region of the United States were actually going to vote for Donald Trump. In general, polling is dead. Polling as we knew it, polling as we came to rely on it, is dead. And I can accept that. Political science can move forward, journalism can move forward. But I'm not going to lie to you here. I think there should be a law, a federal law, passed in the United States that you cannot refer to a knowledge panel survey as a poll. All right? Now, there are other kinds of social science research that I think could rise up to challenge and replace what we thought of as polling in the past and the current scam, fraudulent pseudo-polls that are being published claiming that 48% of black people support Joe Biden. And look, I don't even know, but a few days later, there was another poll published, which again is probably no more reliable, that instead found that 27% of African Americans support Joe Biden. Okay? Why do you think that is? Why do you think there were two polls with two radically different numbers? And we're not even talking about there aren't that many African Americans in the United States who vote for Joe Biden. We're not talking about a phenomenon on the scale of billions of people. This is not like trying to ascertain how many people in China are satisfied with their dentist or something, okay? This is a pretty specialized area of polling. Not all African Americans even care about the Democrat primary. So you're polling a minority within a minority within a minority. We should have consistency if there's any legitimacy to the polls at all, if these are indeed polls at all, okay? Look, there are alternatives, but we can't misrepresent these alternate methods as polling data. I don't even think you should use the term survey. You had a selected public. They have 55,000 people on the so-called knowledge panel, and they're being paid to do this. As far as I know, they're being given vouchers and coupons. They're giving some kind of payment to reward them for their time put into this. This is not polling, okay? And who are they? Who chose? Well, they reassure you, oh, we used rigorous methodology and, we select them so they can be representative. Guess what? You probably chose the type of elderly, especially interested in politics, African Americans who support Joe Biden. This very poll shows the problem. Sorry, this pseudo poll. The results, comparing this, 48%, this shows exactly the kind of skew, exactly the kind of bias, exactly the kind of misrepresentation that's built into that, not despite your rigorous methods, but because of your rigorous methods. What about the people who don't care about politics? What about the people who vote, but who do not want to sign up for your stupid knowledge panel, who don't want to become a member, who don't want to receive the junk email, who don't want a 50-cent voucher or whatever the payment is, people who don't want to play that game? What about the people who hang up the phone? What about the people who don't go in for this bullshit? It's like, that's the ultimate source of bias here, is it's like the people who like participating in political bullshit bias. I guess it's the same thing if you have one of those websites on the internet where people like click a button to show that they want social change. Like, and sometimes people are so naive. They're like, oh, we got 30 million clicks when we asked this question. So, therefore, such and such percentage of the American people want this wonderful social change. No, I mean, you're measuring. Look, this is not even getting into the question of intentional fraud. If you are paying people to be on this stupid panel, I don't know if they get paid $5. I don't know if they get paid $50. What I found on the internet suggested the payment is very modest. But let me tell you something. $5 is not much money if you live in Los Angeles. If you're a retired African-American left-wing person living in Los Angeles, $5 is not a lot of money. $5 is a lot of money in Cambodia. You could have people who sit down as a full-time enterprise in Cambodia, sign up for multiple accounts with Knowledge Panel, and they can do it all, man, because if they have multiple accounts, they're getting $5 from each account, they might have 20 accounts. Cambodia, that's real money. They can get themselves a VPN, they can get some phony paperwork, they can download some stuff from the internet and say, oh yeah, this is my address. They have one address for one email in California, and one that's in Maine, and one that's in Michigan. They can get set up. And if you think that only scammers in Cambodia might be highly motivated to do this, there might be some highly professional people in the service of foreign governments who want to do it. One of the very few articles I read about this was written by a political science professor. I'm sorry, I forget. He was either politics or history, but a professor who said that he had a friend who was intentionally perverting the system. A friend who was out of his own academic interest. This was another university professor who had signed up so he could kind of spy on this system and see how it was working. And he was intentionally putting in like really wacky and extreme results to see if the system would check him or what would happen. Like what happens if you give really contradictory, crazy answers? Like, are they going to detect that there's something wrong, or what's going to happen? So I can imagine that some bored academic at a university with a PhD signing up and joining one of these survey groups because they want to know, where do the polls come from? This is like going inside the sausage factory and seeing how sausage is made, okay? Obviously, this set of cultural assumptions developed in response to the demise of telephone-based polling, the increasing public reluctance to answer such a call, what have you, and it evolved in reaction to the opportunities presented by the internet, where it now seems so easy to send out a spam email to 500 people and say, hey, would you like to make $5? Again, I don't know if it's $5 or $50, answering some questions on polls. And a certain type of person will say yes. But it's not the average person, it's not a representative person. And the more of an effort this company makes to make it representative through rigorous methodology, the more unnatural, the more phony, the more fraudulent the whole procedure is. Because, yeah, sure, they have a preconceived notion of what percentage of black people support Joe Biden. So if you just use the data raw without weighting, what do we mean by weighting the data in political science, right? That means they look at it and go like, oh, well, these numbers don't look right. I think we should give more weight to the people in Indiana and less weight to the people in California for this reason. That you're thinking it through. I mean, the more of this you do, the more nuance you add, the more interpretation, the more rating, the less legitimacy it has as a poll. That's why I say the more methodological rigor they apply to this in trying to make it representative, the phonier and phonier it gets. And this claim this claim that 48% of African Americans vote for Joe Biden, it was based on a survey of only 769 American blacks. And they're not chosen at random. They're not walking out of a subway station, like they're interviewed as they walk out of a subway station. They're not chosen by walking down the street and picking every seventh house as you walk down the street. I mean, those are old-fashioned survey methods where you walked on foot, door to door, and every seventh number, whatever the methodology was, okay? No, these are 769 people who are selected, recruited, and paid to participate in this poll, okay? Polling is dead. The good news is there's a new role like never before for documentary filmmaking to step in. What we can do now more than ever before is get qualitative data where you go in and make a deal with a shoe factory owner. Say, okay, we're going to pay you a little bit of money to interrupt your work at this shoe factory, a little bit for one day. You don't have to stop the whole factory. We're going to come in one day. We're going to interview people in groups of 30. So 30 people come in and do an interview. 30 people come in. We're going to work through all the staff. We're going to film it. It's going to be good advertising for your shoe factory. We're going to put the film on the internet. It's going to be here on YouTube. Say, hey, guess what? We decided to talk to all the employees of this shoe factory in depth about who they're voting for and why. You know what you're going to get? You're going to get really interesting, nuanced, qualitative data, and you're going to get an open question we can all participate in of to what extent are the people who work in that shoe factory representative or not representative of Americans as a whole. Because in the 21st century, when polling is dead, you just can't know.